The stage lights were bright, almost blinding, yet Ernesto stood still as if they weren't even there. 54 years of life had carved deep lines across his face, but his eyes, soft, watery, and filled with quiet longing, spoke of a man who had lived many lives in one. When the judges asked his name, his voice trembled slightly. Ernesto. I'm 54, and this is my first time on a stage like this. He held a worn acoustic guitar, its wood faded and scratched, as though it had traveled through decades of storms with him. He smiled faintly when one of the judges asked why he had decided to audition now. For most of my life, Ernesto began, I've been singing at the door, waiting for someone who never came home. The audience leaned in. The judges exchanged glances. His words weren't fully understood yet, but the emotion behind them sent a hush through the auditorium. Then Ernesto adjusted his guitar strap, closed his eyes, and strummed the first fragile note. His entire being, it seemed, was about to unravel into song. The melody was slow, aching, and hauntingly beautiful. Ernesto's voice carried a raw, unpolished honesty that cut deeper than perfection ever could. The song, titled Still Waiting at the Door, was his own composition. He began softly. It's been 30 years since you walked away. But every night I set 2 plates. And every morning I open the door. Still hoping you'll come back. The words pierced the silence. The audience began to understand, this wasn't just a song. This was Ernesto's life. As he sang, images flooded his memory, his young wife, Maria, waving goodbye one morning with a promise to return. She never did. A car accident had taken her life just a few streets away from their home. Ernesto had waited at that door, day after day, refusing to believe. Through decades, he worked odd jobs, lived quietly, but never remarried. He told neighbors she'd be back. He left her shoes by the door. He even kept her favorite chair untouched. Every chord he played was soaked in grief, every lyric a wound reopened. By the time he reached the chorus, his voice cracked. The theater filled with sniffles, and the judges were no longer hiding their tears. Ernesto wasn't performing for fame. He was singing to the ghost of Maria. When the final note quivered into the air, Ernesto lowered his guitar and let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. He stood still, eyes glistening, hands shaking. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse. Then it began, a single clap. Then another. Then the entire audience rose to their feet, applauding, cheering, crying. The judges were speechless. One of them covered her mouth, trying to steady her voice before speaking. Ernesto, she whispered, I don't even know what to say. That wasn't just a song. That was, your soul. Another judge leaned forward. You've carried that pain for 30 years, haven't you? Ernesto nodded slowly. His lips trembled as he whispered. Every night I still wait at the door. I know she won't come back, but if I stop waiting, it feels like I'll lose her all over again. The room grew silent once more. No one dared move. The story was too heavy, too sacred. For the first time in decades, Ernesto's grief had been witnessed, truly witnessed. And in that moment, the burden seemed a little lighter. The performance aired, and within hours, Ernesto's name trended worldwide. Clips of his trembling voice and heart-wrenching lyrics spread across social media. Millions shared his story, leaving comments like, I don't even know Ernesto, but I feel like I've lost Maria too. He taught me that love never dies, it just changes shape. This is the most powerful audition I've ever seen. In the weeks that followed, people visited Ernesto's small town, leaving flowers at his doorstep. Strangers wrote letters, thanking him for giving them courage to grieve their own losses. Widows, widowers, and even children who had lost parents felt seen for the first time. What Ernesto had carried alone for 30 years now belonged to millions. But he never saw himself as a star. When reporters asked how fame felt, he only shook his head softly. I didn't sing to be famous. I sang because I wanted Maria to know I never stopped waiting. The world realized something profound. Ernesto's song wasn't just about a man and his lost wife. It was about anyone who had ever loved and lost, and how the heart learns to keep waiting, even when it knows the truth. One crisp evening, weeks after his audition, Ernesto returned home from a long day. The porch light flickered, and the door creaked just as it had for 30 years. He stood there for a moment, looking at the shoes by the mat, Maria's shoes, untouched since the day she left. His hand lingered on the knob, trembling. That night, he didn't set 2 plates at the table. He sat alone with his guitar, gently strumming the melody once more. Tears ran freely down his face, but this time they weren't only tears of sorrow. For the first time, he felt Maria's presence not as a ghost waiting to return, but as a memory that would always live inside him. I'll always wait at the door, he whispered into the quiet. But maybe I don't need to leave it open anymore. And with that, Ernesto closed the door, not in bitterness, not in surrender, but in peace. The world outside continued to replay his song, crying with him, healing with him. But inside that small home, for the first time in 3 decades, Ernesto laid his guitar gently aside, closed his eyes, and smiled. For he knew, in some way beyond understanding, Maria had finally come home.